Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about graphic novels, which ones I liked, which ones I didn't like, what made me like them, and what makes me sort of dislike graphic novels that I haven't liked. So common themes. In particular, I'm going to talk about things like plot, the art, the price, and the length, which I think are probably key things that determine whether I'm going to like or dislike a graphic novel. I acknowledge that these things are quite subjective, but this is just, I guess, my personal preference. So yeah, grab yourself a cup of tea. I've got my rose tea next to me. And yes, in case you were wondering, I did almost burn my entire flat down. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but I did burn a bit of the wall because of these candles. I lifted this chair up, it moved the whole table. The candle started burning a small bit of the wall. Luckily it was very small. I pulled it away, the wax splattered on my arm, and then I spent the last 30 minutes trying to scrub the soot off the wall. So yeah, all of that for this video, so please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. So as you can see next to me, I have a stack of graphic novels. These are graphic novels I have read. I haven't included the ones on my physical TBR or on my bookshelves that I haven't read yet. So out of these, 4 of them stand out as graphic novels I absolutely love. The rest of them, some of them were alright from the rest of them, but there are specific things that made me ultimately decide I don't like those graphic novels. So with all of that being said, let's get started. So I'm going to start with the graphic novels that I didn't love. I'm going to start with Fangs by Sarah Anderson. So this one came out around last year, I think, or the year before. It gets recommended quite a lot around Halloween time. It's a romance between a werewolf and a vampire. The reason I didn't like this one, firstly, I will say the illustrations are lovely. I don't know if you can see that. It does come in very aesthetically pleasing cloth bound cover. So the thing is, a lot of graphic novels I find are obviously more expensive than your average book. Makes sense, they're illustrations, a lot of them are colored illustrations, the paper quality is often better. And so I understand that, but for a novel that is more expensive, this one has almost no plot. I don't know if it's not meant to be a story, but it's more like if you're reading the newspaper and there's a comic strip for Garfield or something. This is very similar in the sense that every chapter or every few pages is that sort of style of a small joke or a small story, and then it ends and you move on to the next one. I finished reading this in probably under 20 minutes. And I know you read graphic novels quicker because there's images, less text, but considering I am a slow reader, when you're paying that much for a book and you finish it in under 20 minutes, and I mean, I personally didn't find that it was enough of a story, there wasn't much of a storyline going on, I just don't know if it's worth it. If I had to compare this to something, it would be if there was a comic on Tumblr. Then somewhat similar was Princess Ever After. So this was actually one I read recently. It's by Kate O'Neill, who also wrote and illustrated the Tea Dragon Society. This one is for a slightly younger audience, I think. It's YA. While there were interesting themes or ideas that I think the author was trying to explore in this one, you never really go into any depth on those actual topics. There were ideas of love, friendship, bravery, what it means to be a good person, things like that. Quite nice, wholesome ideas. There'd be one very shallow example of that good trait and then you move on. The story wraps up very seamlessly, almost too easily in my opinion. And you jump from point A being the beginning to point B, the end, just so quick without much character progression. Again, a very short one. For the price, I don't know if it's worth it. And I will say the illustrations of this one, this is obviously personal preference, not my favorite. the color scheme wasn't my favorite. The Tea Dragon Society is a much more aesthetically pleasing graphic novel if that's what you're looking for. Then we have Nimona. This one is by Noelle Stevenson. When people make videos about what graphic novels to read, I often see this one recommended. So Nimona is a character who's had quite a difficult past. I'll go more into that in a second. But she becomes the sidekick to this supervillain called Lord Blackheart. He's sort of a misjudged character. He's seen as a villain when in reality he is a lot kinder than people perceive him to be. And the people who are good in this world, Sir Goldenloin, I believe the hero is called, the good people in this world are actually not so good. And I think that's, you know, an interesting conversation, who we perceive as good and bad, when the bad people may actually be good and the good people may actually be bad. I will say the length is pretty good for a graphic novel. When you're paying £10.99, I feel like I expected to be this long. The art style personally is not my favorite. There were parts of it that nice. I'm gonna try to show you what the art style is like in these. It's sort of like a game kind of art style is how I would describe it. I sort of wish we'd gone more into detail about Nimona's past. We see bits of, you know, how hard her childhood was and the transformations she's had and everything like that, but I just don't think we see enough of that. I wish we'd followed Lord Blackheart. I think he was a much more fun, interesting character to follow than Nimona was. I honestly found her a bit boring. Then we have The Witch Boy. This one was £11.99. Again, it's a decent length for a graphic novel. It's by Molly Knox Ostertag. So this one I actually quite like the art style. I'll try and show you a few images. So I picked this one up because I quite like witchy stories. Even just looking at the cover, you can tell it has that witchy vibe. Obviously it's in the name too. Basically in this world, there's a family, they're a magical family, and the women in the family grow up to be witches, and the boys in the family grow up to be shapeshifters, and that's just how it's always been. However, our main character, Asta, he is more inclined to studying witchcraft. He's really good at spells, and even though he's forbidden from pursuing this or going down that path, he secretly does enjoy it. He doesn't tell people, but it is what he himself feels most drawn to. Then when someone goes missing, Asta takes it upon himself to use his witchcraft and try and help save his family. And it is quite wholesome in that sense. I think it again has some interesting conversations about gender and stereotypes, what boys should be like, what girls should be like, and I really like that he uses the means of witchcraft and fantasy concepts to explore that. However, again, I don't feel like there was much of a plot in this one. As you'll see, there is a similar theme amongst a lot of these graphic novels that I didn't love. The middle of the book is where I feel like there was something missing. The build-up was nice, the end was wholesome, but I feel like a key part of the story was just lacking in my opinion. Then we have Saga. This one was £8.99. So the first thing I'll say about Saga, this is just volume 1. I've only read volume 1, and reading this did not give me any incentive to carry on with the series. So I doubt I'm gonna carry on with this series. I'm gonna just tell you what the storyline is about before I tell you why I wasn't the biggest fan. So this one is about a world in which there's two sort of planets with opposing races or species, and this couple on the cover are from these opposing planets, but they came together, had a child, and because these two worlds hate each other, there's basically a chase through space to find them and their baby. So in terms of the actual plot in this one, in this short amount of pages, I honestly feel like we didn't get much. I feel like we were introduced to different species after different species, and didn't get much time to actually learn much about them. I feel like we didn't get, given this is the first novel, we're told they had a child together, we're not given enough background into their relationship. And I don't think we're given enough background into the worlds either. Why do they hate each other so much? How did that come to be? What is life like on each of these planets? How did these two meet? This one is somewhat cheaper than your typical graphic novel nowadays, I think. But again, I feel like the length is short. The art style, not my favorite personally. I'm gonna try to show you. I think there are parts of it that look kind of cool, but overall just not my style. That's personal preference again. I'm not gonna hold that against this. I do think for this many pages we needed more of a plot. I feel like we're going from place to place. Honestly, I feel like it's just them running away from different people or species or whatever. And I just feel like this book doesn't have much depth beyond that. It could be that the next books are better. I just feel like this is too short. I started reading it, I was thrown into a new world, and then shortly after, the story ended. I know you can argue that, you know, typical comics are also short, but then I feel like they are released, if we're talking, for example, superhero comics, they're released more frequently. Then let's talk Lumberjanes. The Lumberjanes is about a group of girls. They go to this sort of summer camp, and then weird things are happening, sort of supernatural, mysterious sort of events keep happening. They try to figure out what's going on. They go on this quest. The series follows on from there. I've only read the first one again. I don't plan on continuing this series. The first thing in terms of the plot, if you look at this cover, to me it's not the best representation of the story. So when I look at this cover, I think sort of like a wholesome story, a group of friends, they're at summer camp. I guess I thought it was more of a story about friendship and camp and things like that. I personally wasn't the biggest fan of the supernatural elements. I feel like it almost takes away from the summer camp vibes. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but for £10.99, this many pages just doesn't feel worth it to me. It would be if I thought the plot was good. I'm going to go into an example where a short graphic novel, which was relatively expensive, does have a good plot in my opinion, or good storyline, but for me this wasn't it. I actually do really like the art style. I think I was drawn to this more by the cover, although like I said, I was hoping there'd be more summer camp, Girl Scout vibes. Next we have Goldie Vance. So this is a sort of Nancy Drew-esque mystery series. I do have the first 4 graphic novels because I was gifted them as a set. I've only read this one and I don't really feel like reading the others after this. I don't know if I ever will. This one was actually not priced too badly. It was £7.99 for just this one, the set. I don't know how much it cost because I got it as a gift. But my main issue with this one was the plot. So it's described to be a sort of Nancy Drew style mystery. I didn't think the mystery in here was very good at all. I think this might be a YA book, but nevertheless, there are good YA books that have a good mystery behind them. I just don't think this one did. The mystery was, I don't even know how to describe this, but it was at the same time predictable and the sort of mystery where even if you're given clues, because it doesn't make enough sense, you would never have figured it out. Do you know what kind of mystery I mean? I think we were just almost thrown into the plot. And I don't know, for me personally, like I feel like I need to care somewhat about the character to enjoy the plot. I'll show you some of the illustrations. I hope you can see that. I will say the art style is kind of cute. It reminds me of more old school comics, which I really like. And it feels like this one is set, okay, I don't know what time period it is, but the fashion and the cars and the restaurants and things like that make you feel a little bit older, which I love. Like, I think this one had great potential. I love Nancy Drew. I love books set in the 90s, the 80s, things like that. Now I'm speaking about this, I'm tempted to try the next one, and maybe the mysteries get better. But in this one, it just wasn't the best. The last graphic novel that wasn't really my vibe is the Tea Dragon Society, and even saying that feels wrong because I'm not gonna lie, despite this one being expensive, and it doesn't say the price in pounds, but it was $17.99 US. The art style is so beautiful. So in this one, we exist in a world where we have creatures called tea dragons. So basically these little dragons, and on their scales they grow different types of tea. So there's a chamomile tea dragon, rooibos tea dragon, there's basically different ones. A ginger tea dragon, hibiscus, Earl Grey, peppermint, there's loads of tea dragons. Actually at the back of the book it tells you about each of the tea dragons, and you can like try match your personality with one of theirs. The concept in itself is so cute, even though I feel like this is for a younger audience. I just think it's so wholesome and cute. The art style is gorgeous, probably one of the prettiest I've seen. I hope you can see that. This one is so much more expensive than I think any graphic novel I own. It is hardback, it is a big book, it has gorgeous illustrations, and I do acknowledge it might be for a younger audience, but I feel like there was practically no plot in this. And I know this might be one of those books that's, you know, no plot, just vibes. You're just there to enjoy the artwork, the wholesomeness, the friendship. But at the same time, just reading this, I felt like nothing was really happening. So this book split into 4 seasons, so it goes like spring, summer, fall, winter. I almost wish we'd had 4 books, one for each season. For this price, I feel like it could have been longer. Now I'm going to talk to you about the graphic novels I really liked and that I would recommend you read. The first one is extremely underrated, and that is Deafo. At least it's underrated here on BookTube, I think. So this one is about a girl called Cece. Well, she's a bunny, but a girl called Cece, and she's deaf, and she moves to a new school where I believe she's the only deaf person, whereas in her old school, everyone in her class was deaf. So this is obviously a huge transition for her, and she has to wear a giant hearing aid strapped to her chest. She sort of calls this like her superpower, because wearing that hearing aid, she can actually hear what people in her school are talking about, even if they're not super close to her. But more than anything, Cece wants to make a good friend, and being deaf is not as easy as you would hope it would be. She already feels sort of different or like an outsider because of her hearing aid, which is very prominent in her physical appearance. It's like on her chest. She's treated differently because of the hearing aid, not always with bad intention, but yeah, for a young child to deal with that, it's obviously difficult. And the reason I love this book more than anything else is it taught me so much. An example is Cece explains to us that, you know, when someone finds out another person is deaf, they like over express or over enunciate words when they're speaking to that person, but that makes it harder for a deaf person to lip read because they've learned to grow accustomed to a word making a certain shape on your lips. The art style I actually really liked. It's really cute. You also get a good amount of pages. The next graphic novels are the Heavy Vinyl series. So these are the 2 that I know are out. I'm not sure if any more have been released, but basically these are set in the 90s/early 2000s, and Chris, who's this girl, has started working at her local record store, and she finds out that the girls in the store, so this group of 4 girls basically, are part of a female vigilante group, and she joins them and starts training. and they basically help overcome crime. The first reason I love these books is because of the 90s vibes. If you know me, you know I love 90s vibes, the things they talk about, the technology they have at the time. I just love that stuff. Also, when it makes references to things from the 90s or early 2000s, events that have happened, people, it's just so cool to me. So this one is priced at £10.99, and even though they are short, and that's why I said at the beginning, a lot of my opinions on these are very subjective because it touches a specific place in my heart. I just loved it. I know that doesn't mean everyone will love it. People may not think these are worth the price, and I understand that. But if you like the 90s, if you were born in the 90s or grew up in the 90s, I think you could really like these. I'm just going to show you the art style. I quite like the art style. The next one I'm going to talk about is also a series, and that is Giant Days. I read the first 3 volumes. So these are basically about a group of 3 friends. They are in university in the UK, and it literally just follows their lives through university. So their relationships, their friendships, the clubs they're involved in, the degrees they're doing. These are priced at £10.99. I really like these. I think the friendship between the 3 girls is really cute. The story doesn't have like a huge plot, it's just following them through university, which I quite liked. It's kind of quiet, and just, you know, there are more volumes. I just haven't continued on with the series. I'm not sure that I will. I feel like after a point it feels a bit repetitive, but I will say it is enjoyable to read. Then we have Mooncakes. I absolutely love this one. So this one is about Nova. She's a witch, and her childhood crush Tam moves into their neighborhood, and they basically team up and try to overcome these dark supernatural forces that are at play in the neighborhood. This one is $14.99 US. While this one does have, you know, the plot of the supernatural stuff going on, I think it's actually a fairly quiet book. It handles conversations about culture, about disabilities, about gender in just such a positive way, and in such a subtle way where these conversations aren't thrown in your face. They're just blended seamlessly into the story, and I think it's a really wholesome book. The relationship between Nova and I think it was her aunts or grandmas is also really cute. I think the art style is lovely too. So this is one example. But yeah, what I loved about this one is the cozy vibes. I love cozy vibes. Candles, books, everything. Yummy food, tea. Nova lives on top of a coffee shop, which her grandma's run, I believe. And there's like a bookstore at the back. I don't know if it's a bookstore, they just have a very large collection of books. I can't remember. But that vibe is just so cozy to me. Like, I want to own a coffee shop with a bookstore, and that's what made me want to stay in the world. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know in the comments. Let me know what some of your favorite graphic novels are, some that you didn't like, if you agree with my opinions on these or if you disagree with any. I know they are quite subjective, but yeah, I'd love to hear from you, so let me know. Thank you for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and I would love if you would subscribe to this channel. Thank you.